All right, everybody, I'd like to call to order the Animal Regulation Subcommittee of April 29th at 7:02 PM. All right, continuation of our last meeting, discussing coming up with an animal regulations. The first meeting, we started off by kind of freewheeling it a little bit to get everybody accustomed to everybody's personality and thoughts in this process. Now we're going to get down to work and try to come up with something. I did reach out to town council today, now just for clarity, to make sure about open meeting laws. This is a subcommittee, it's not a public hearing. So we allowed the audience to participate in the last meeting just to get their thoughts out. But we're going to get our draft done before we open it back up to the audience, because otherwise we're never going to get done with this thing. No disrespect to anybody, but I think the proper way to do it so we can finish our work and be efficient about it. So you've seen the, I said that I was going to have an email, then I chose not to, because I didn't want to do what I'm going to criticize. I understood that, Jessica, you reached out to Kristen about complaints?
Yes.
A list of the complaints?
Yes, I was just curious to see
curious,
what
but what I don't want to do is focus on complaints. It's going to create, you can share whatever this meeting, but it's important that we work as a group and not outside the meeting on our own.
I thought we were supposed to message Kristen.
I don't want to focus on the I don't personally want, I don't know, and everybody else can weigh in on it. It's going to distract us from what we're doing. We're here because of complaints.
Right, so complaints are part of it. I was just curious what they were so that they could point us in the direction of what needs to be addressed.
Yep.
I think we should know what the complaints are.
Yep, no, that's fine.
You know, it gives us more of where the boundaries are.
Yep. She did put down, because I asked her specifically, I wanted to know how she categorized them. I would have preferred, if we had talked about it, if we got a list of complaints, basically like anonymous.
Right.
I don't care what street they're on, I don't care who it is, I don't care what it is. If it's about crazy chickens on A Street, it doesn't matter. I don't need to know about A Street, I only need to know that there's crazy chickens, right?
That's what I wanted
I'm picking on you
to.
because I know you get chickens and you're on A Street, right?
I wasn't on the list,
Just like Dallas.
surprisingly.
Dallas complaining about
I
Autumn's
didn't bring the list, so I can just, to dispel, it was just, if you want to
you
hear.
can pass it around. Because,
No, I didn't bring it, because I
Oh,
just
you did?
wanted to know what it was, so.
Oh, okay.
If you want, I can tell you. It was noise, animals leaving property, odor, and concerns of overcrowding. So
Yeah.
those were, and there were various ones, all different
Yep.
size lots, all different areas, so those were just the categories.
Anybody want anything further on that? Do you want to, no?
Nope, that's about what I figured.
Darlene? You want to see anything further on that, or are you satisfied with that?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, Chris?
No,
Good? Okay. One thing I didn't mention is Liz has an excused absence. It's important to recognize that because as our bylaws state that if you have 4 unexcused absence, you're considered resigned.
Oh.
But she had one excused last time, she had another one, and today is excused, she's still on vacation. Okay, so hopefully you didn't take that the wrong way, but you understand what I mean. I don't want to create tensions and stuff, I want to focus on what we're doing.
No tensions intended, just information.
So this thing here, I instead of printing out the whole thing, because I wanted to make sure we captured the, just the information that was on this. Somehow I ended up, oh yeah, I got what I need. This was a survey done in California. I found it, I did a search under farm animal regulations, and this one popped up, and it was interesting because of how they structured it. Right? So you have 3 different categories in this particular thing, A, B, and C, right? And then you had a reference chart that went along with it, that if you had, in this particular place, 2 to 2.9 acres, medium density country residential, you would fall in A. So in A, you could have a rabbit, a chicken, or a turkey, right? So then you have to assign how many units, and each animal has a value to the unit. So if you said in the under 3 acres, you could have 6 units. Okay, so you could have 6 of one of these, or 2 of each of them, or 3 of one, or 4 of one, and 1 of each of the other ones, however you came up with the 6, right? It seemed like a kind of a cool way to identify what it is. This would be really handy for somebody new moving into town, because then you could just hand them all this and say, so where do you live? All right, I live on
Right.
Southeast Main Street. Okay, so you're going to be in category B.
Right.
All right, cool. And you can have 30 units. Awesome. Right, now you can look at a chart and you can figure out what you could have. And as I stated last time, this is my own personal opinion, I'm not speaking for anybody here or anybody else. These are guidelines. And the only time it comes into play, and then maybe I'll get in trouble for saying this, is if there's a complaint, right? So if you were supposed to have 30 units and you have 40 units, and everything's going along good, and nobody's saying anything, everything's fine. Chris decides to complain about your 150 cows that just gave birth that I was talking about last time. Then whoever the agent is that comes down and looks at it and says, "Oh, dude, you're out of control. You got, well, yeah, but these are going to market on Friday." All right, cool. So I'm going to give you a week, 2 weeks, 30 days, whatever it is. Yeah, no problem. Have it fixed. At least there's a mechanism in place for the town in which to act on these complaints, right? And hopefully they can see through nonsense complaints, somebody just being ridiculous. Like I said the other day, I don't like brown horses, so Linda can't have a brown horse, I'm going to complain about it. But it's not realistic, right? So I think that's the goal I have in mind. I don't know what everybody else is thinking, and I would be eager to hear anybody else's thoughts on this as the directions they think we should be heading in. Or at least we can make a pool of ideas and try to come to a conclusion.
So this is from California?
That was out of California. I took it off there, so I didn't.
Do you know how big the town was? Was it Los Angeles or?
Again, so
That makes-
I have no idea. I don't even know the name of the town, but stop, just humor me for a
All
minute.
I had to do was say, no, you don't.
No, all I have to do is finish
Just
what I
ask a question and I just say, no, you don't.
Can I finish what I was going to say? Okay, thank you. So the intention of this is just to give us some sort of starting point so we have a guideline, that's all. Whether the town is 10,000 people or 100,000 people, it's irrelevant to how we're going to come up with the values. We don't have to use this at all. If the group doesn't want to use this, that's perfectly fine. But we need a starting point. So everybody seemed to be.
I was interested in the animal units. I was hoping
Correct.
you would email them so I would have time to research and digest, but I took it upon myself to go to Wikipedia and I printed one out for everyone. But the problem with, this says LU, which I'm not familiar with, I guess that must be livestock units.
Yep.
Animal units is based on land, grazing land for grazing animals, so it doesn't apply to animals that eat grain. So that's the problem
And
I
hay.
have. Yeah, that's the problem I have with using animal units, is it's all based on land, grazing land per grazing animal. So it doesn't apply to, like, if you're feeding your chickens grain, you're feeding your horses brown bales.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
this seems like it's more on a space, on,
Yep.
you know,
Well,
it's like we have our
Just to come up with
zonings,
an
it's the same
idea,
thing.
just to
Right.
come up with an idea, so if we went by grazing animals, right, so, okay, so you can have 2 grazing animals and then you can have 3 feed animals, it just gets confusing, right? But if you have an actual picture that says, okay, that thing's worth 12 points, maybe if I didn't have units and I had points, it would be easier. I don't know. It's just, like,
I guess
again,
you have
it's
to
just a,
define livestock then. Define it
it's
as-
just a thought process to
Right.
try to help us get started. That's all it's for.
Right.
I have an alternate route to get
Yep,
us started.
yep.
I actually wrote a draft, and we could go through section by section if you want, and people could say, I agree with this, I don't agree with this, or make changes, or what have you. I loosely based it on the one that was provided, but I pretty much started over from scratch. And on this one, I based the land on recommended land per animal.
Yep.
As you can see,
You have
it's
copies
like
for everybody?
small, yep,
Yeah.
can pass this down. Based on small, medium, and large sized animals. Pass that down. There's an extra one for Lisa,
Oh.
is that, who's not here?
Got an extra.
Sorry, I don't remember her name.
Well, we got missing people, that's why.
Yeah.
Right, yep, this one is
Liz.
the extra.
Liz, I believe, yeah?
Liz, okay, thank you. So I don't know if you want to, I apologize, I didn't have a chance to email it in advance.
Yeah, let's give everybody a couple minutes to,
Or if you want to read it one section at a time out loud, we could go through it that way.
if you could give me a couple minutes, I personally would
Sure.
like a couple minutes just to look at it. Chris, any thoughts? I'm going to go around the tables, that's how we typically do it.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think like between these two things, come up with something, right?
Yeah, but this particular document, any thoughts on this particular document? Comments, concerns? If you don't, you don't. I just
Not really.
trying to just get some
You did a nice job putting it together, though.
Thank you.
buzz.
Well, there's a few things in here that don't go,
Yeah, such as.
you know. Like keeping them contained all the time, it doesn't happen. Tree comes on your fence, it's gone. Now your responsibility, act of nature. And I can tell you, you can check your fence every single day. The second that tree comes down, they're out the door,
Right, for sure.
whether you know it or not.
Yep.
And you get the call from the town that says your animals are here. And all you gotta do is go round them up.
Yep,
People who live next to animals have to expect that, because
Right.
everybody's animals have been loose before.
oh, yeah, for sure.
So that's something that you can't prevent.
Yeah,
The manure is a big issue.
yeah.
I think the town should have its own composting bin. Everybody who has animals, put it all there. Everybody with gardens.
Going to have to be a pretty big bin.
It'd have to be a big bin.
That's a great
We got
idea.
that pit behind the VFW. Put one in there. Doesn't affect anybody. It's not near anybody.
There's a lot of wetlands down there. That's why,
Yeah, there is way in the back.
yeah.
But
That's where that wood chip pile
where
is.
the wood
there.
chips, yeah, further
Yeah.
behind that in the
Okay.
pit.
Never been that far, so
It's,
it's upland.
just an old pit. They throw stumps and everything else down there.
They're basically composting anyways, right?
Yeah. If you put a small bin in there, or a large enough bin, because we do have a lot of horses in town, hey, town go by, stir it once in a while, you compost for all your gardens
But
in
that
the
requires
summertime.
people being able to move it,
That's correct.
load it and move it.
If you've got
That's
one or
not
two
possible for a lot of
horses, yeah.
backyard horse people.
But there's enough people that I'm sure somebody can move it,
Well, I think,
you know?
You could
Covered
compost it on
is
your own
asking a lot.
property.
To a point, yeah.
Yeah,
Unless you have too many animals, and then you can't keep up.
that's right, then you could use
Just
that.
be an option of something to do with it. You don't have to.
Right.
right, it could be, you're right.
Like, I have plenty of piles at my house right now, and it's all going up to the solar farm to build that soil up there.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's
I
a
have
manure
that-
plan then.
Benefit of having a place to get rid of it, or I'll spread it on the fields, one or the other.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have that benefit.
Right.
Yeah,
And then you're gonna get the complaints, especially with chickens, because no animal smells worse. So,
really? Huh,
than chickens?
yeah. I don't know.
The flies, the flies mainly take care of the chicken droppings, and you can
Everybody
get
has,
the
it. Yeah,
larvae
you put it in,
to promote.
if you put it into compost,
Yeah, yep. Do
No,
you have a suggestion for changing the wording for fencing? Maybe instead of must be securely
well, you have to,
confined?
you have to try to keep your fences
Yeah,
up.
or like, we could change the wording to a reasonable attempt at,
Reasonable, yeah,
okay,
Right.
a reasonable attempt
because there's no chance
to
of,
contain,
I have trees all around my fences.
right.
My chainsaw
Yeah,
gets to
acts
work
of
out
God,
every
of
year.
course, that's a special circumstance. Okay, a reasonable attempt must be made to confine.
But most people with their horses, large amounts of horses, they have to haul it away somewhere. Now they're paying to get rid of it.
For the
You want to
manure.
pay as few times as possible. If they had a place public that they could just put it,
Yeah.
all the people,
That's-
vegetable gardeners, they look for compost, they got to go pay for it,
That's a great suggestion.
you know? Like a
who?
local,
To whom would we make that suggestion? What board could we make that suggestion for a manure?
Board of Health.
To the board?
what,
All right.
Yeah, what else?
So what would you call it? A manure
a
Compost.
compost,
composting
town
bin.
manure compost area? That's a great idea. Thank you.
That solves a lot of problems for a lot of people who don't have a place to get rid of it from
Yes.
their neighbors
yes.
complaining about the smell.
Right. Mhm. What do you, I had put in here, need recommended distance for manure must maintain a distance of from
What
property
page?
line. Is there,
Oh, this
sorry,
manure.
it's on the
Well, that-
second to last page, section 7D.
I had looked up
A manure
30 different
setback.
towns with our size and
Yeah. and, you know,
Population.
It could depend on the lot.
30 to
the lot
50.
size. 30 to 50 feet.
Yeah, was what I got most of the time,
That sounds good.
30 or 50.
Okay, before we get in,
Okay.
hold off on your
Sure.
questions. I want to go
Oh, yeah.
finish going around the table.
Any
Yeah,
more, Buzz?
Anything else, Buzz?
Not really.
Sally?
It covers a lot.
It does cover that, right. The animal inspector part,
Which number is that?
number 4,
Number 4?
and your special permits, that would just be for smaller areas.
I wanted to put special permits in there, so it's kind of a safety net for if someone, the 2 points,
Smaller
livestock, yeah, for the smaller lots, a desire to have livestock in excess of 12 hens on lots under .25 acres in village residential, or where proper setbacks for animal enclosures such as barns and coops and manure piles are not possible. So basically, the smaller
Smaller,
lots
right.
where the setbacks are going to be an issue, or the manure will be too close, or the barn or coop will be too close, so.
So what are our state, I didn't look up our state agricultural regulations.
Nothing that affects us, that's why we're sitting here.
Okay, so if this, so as far as the animal inspector goes, that's something we can suggest.
The animal inspector thing is going to fall under the Board of Health, right? We can talk about it, but it's not what we've been charged with to come up with.
So we don't have any
right?
say in what they do with that.
They're supposed to have one. and
They're
They're
supposed-
supposed
they're
to check your
supposed to
farm
have
every
one.
year.
Right, right.
It doesn't happen.
Well, that's good.
Well, yes and no.
Right,
It depends on the situation.
right,
But-
right, right. Okay. And then I had highlighted the manure thing too. To me, I don't know, that's a hard area.
What's that?
The manure that he brought up,
Yep.
being stored, covered, or in a contained area
Yep.
away from wetlands.
Or composted,
Compost.
Yeah.
yeah, so that's in there.
You good? Linda?
Okay. So under the animal inspector, on page 2, I noticed it doesn't give the animal inspector any teeth for anyone to ever comply. In other words, what about fines? I mean, I think from what I was hearing, that that's what they were looking for, to give him some teeth. I mean, he can keep saying, you know, you gotta keep that horse on your property, or those, not pigs, but the chickens are just roaming all over the street for the 10th time, you know? And there should be something in this about fines somewhere, you know, even if it's $25 first offense, or the first offense, there's no fine. And then after that, you know, second and third fine, it could get up to $100.
Same offense, right?
Or 50,
They're still
yes,
not fixing
correct.
the problem.
Yeah. And I know that, you know, some fences are great and some are just awful. That there's no way this animal is going to be contained. So, and then, let's see. Oh, on 6, public safety, under structure placement, you had EG 30 feet from property line. And I believe that should be 25. In RA, side yard setbacks are 25.
Okay.
And 50 feet the front setback.
Yeah.
It's a
again-
building zone.
again,
But she, you know, it's just getting it
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I'm just going
I
to help you
just-
with that a little bit, Linda.
That's so-
Again, setbacks, structures, and all that fall under zoning and building codes.
So this
It's not
should be-
It's not something that we have to worry about because
Stricken.
we,
So I could
you
just-
can't, you can't turn around and say, you got to be 10 feet off the property line when it calls for 25 in the zoning code, right? We don't have that authority, or the Board of Health doesn't have that authority, we have no authority.
So as far
Board
as
of Health
the
doesn't have that authority, so
structure,
structures
Yeah.
and setbacks is all going to be dictated by the zoning or the building code.
it does say that here.
Yep, if you want to make a recommendation that you can't put your manure pile on the property line, you want to maintain the property line setbacks per zoning, that might be appropriate to word it like that, so then you're not trying to figure out where you're going to be.
Then
But
we'd have to change the zoning bylaw to add manure in there somewhere. This is just,
no, you
for the
wouldn't be
structure.
changing, you wouldn't be changing the zoning bylaw. You're going to create a regulation within the Board of Health that would adhere to use the zoning setback bylaw as a reference to what it is, right? But
I'm just
so-
talking about the structures, not manure. Because it says it right here, under A, structure placement,
6A.
and manure is not a structure.
We can
So,
just strike that.
what it's
Strike
trying to
the-
say-
Let's go back to how I started this, is the structures are governed under the zoning bylaw for setbacks and building code. If it's over 200 square feet, it needs a building permit. If it's under 200 square feet, it does not, but you still have to adhere to the zoning
Right.
setbacks.
Right.
If we're talking about manure like we were, we could reference the zoning bylaw for setbacks. It's just a suggestion, right? I'm not talking about buildings or anything else. I understand that's in there. I'm trying to help you with the thought process that if we want to make a reference to where the manure can go, right? You could reference, or not, reference the setbacks in the zoning bylaw, and then that would just make it real simple.
I think Linda was just saying, if you look at 6AI, just striking the part after, it would end the sentence at according with zoning laws, period, and then just strike the parentheses.
Cool,
Yes.
okay. And let's see, right to farm. We are not a right to farm town.
Right. I wasn't sure about that
Yeah,
wording.
so that doesn't, that's something that would go to town meeting, not the,
Yeah, we could
Regulation.
strike that. That was more of the, someone had mentioned at one point having information available
Yeah.
on the Douglas Town website about livestock and animal practices, just to provide information to folks who are interested.
like the community engagement and education.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's all I had. Except for
Okay.
if, for
You're
like at the end of the
you go
complaint.
last. So, looking at this, it's not clear to me what I can have. Because over in this book, in your, under livestock, all right, let's, wait a minute. I gotta see where it was, I should have kept reading it while, so the,
Density limits.
Density limit 5G,
Page 2,
page 2.
yeah, I was a little
Page two,
concerned,
yep.
.10 acre.
yeah, that's not what I'm looking
Yeah.
at.
Oh,
That's not what I'm looking at. So, under 3B, special permits. Livestock in excess of 12 hens on lots under a quarter of an acre. So if I don't have 12 hens, I have 11 hens, then I can have whatever I want on that quarter acre?
yeah,
I, as an individual, disagree with that.
I see what
disagree
you're
with that.
saying, that it should be listed under
So,
limits.
So, and I'm not forcing this, I'm only suggesting this, right? That's what appealed to me about this here. When somebody comes into town and they're on a quarter of an acre, they may only be in category A, which they can have a rabbit, a chicken, or a turkey, right? They can't be in C and have a bison. You just can't have any bisons on your zone A. right?
so it should be fowl, not livestock, FOWL.
I
And then-
guess.
and then
I
sex
guess,
of
but it
12
doesn't
hens.
identify what you can have on the size, that particular size of property, right?
That's true.
Somebody, it's got to be, well, tell me what I can have on it.
Right. You still, it's not clear.
If I'm
You
confusing
can have 12 or less
12 what?
What?
hens.
Yeah, but it says livestock.
Yeah, that's right, so we changed livestock to fowl in excess of 12.
No, what he's saying is, so if I call you and say, I want to have a cow on this property, there's nothing that's specifying.
There's nothing there. If somebody calls up,
No, this is for a
if
special
Autumn
permit.
calls up and she wants
for
to move her
fowl.
20 horses from her 2 acres over to a quarter-acre lot, there's nothing that says that she can't. It just says that she can't have more than 12 chickens.
Right.
That's right. It should not say
Only
livestock, it
one
should
animal.
say fowl, chickens,
No, what he's,
any type of fowl.
I know what you're trying to say.
I know
I know what he's trying to say.
yeah.
What are
You're
you, what
limiting-
was your intention?
Wait a minute, one person at a time. Let Buzz explain
Go ahead.
that, and then you can ask the second question, too.
According to this, you're limiting that quarter acre to only fowl if you put that.
Correct. I don't think you should
So you can't have
have,
anything else but
quarter
fowl.
acre's pretty small.
I agree with you 100%.
You should not have a horse on a
But
quarter
it
of an
doesn't
acre.
say that in here.
Right.
Correct.
That's,
You're right.
That's what I'm saying. I understand what you're saying, but I'm trying to get,
This
I
only
don't
pertains
understand.
to chickens, this little,
Correct.
But it
That's the
doesn't say
problem.
that I can't have my bison.
it says what you can have.
Right, but it doesn't say
It
what
doesn't
you
say
can't.
what I can't have.
right.
It
Don't
doesn't
want a
say,
cow on a quarter
it
acre.
doesn't say only fowl. It says if I exceed 12 fowl or hens or whatever we want to categorize them as, then I need a special permit, but it doesn't say I can't have buddies for the chickens, right? And the bison wants to hang out with the chickens, then I can't have them. But I can have them because it's not exempt. So this is, and again, that's what, by having something that tells you
Right.
what you can actually have, and what is that? Okay, what area? You're in A, all right, so that's
This,
what you can have.
this to me is so confusing to the average homeowner.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas this is,
This
to me, is so plain Jane.
Yeah, but it's.
You know,
too late.
it's-
not,
It
it's got to
doesn't-
be a little more
doesn't
specific.
Change livestock to birds
Okay,
or fowl.
But then you're really
All right.
pushing
Now-
the rabbits or anything.
Right.
all right, let's
No.
stop for a second. I'm going to skip past you, Linda,
Yeah.
because you already understand it.
Okay.
What can I have on a quarter acre according to this?
Quarter,
No, this.
oh,
Forget the colored papers. What can I have on a quarter acre?
Anything,
12 chickens,
Huh?
12 chickens.
Can I have anything else?
Doesn't specify.
What can I have on a quarter acre?
Anything you want, as long as you don't have more than 12 chickens.
anything but 13 chickens.
That's
So
what it
that's what my point is. I'm not trying to be difficult, and it's like, it's not clear, right?
It's,
And-
On density limits, B, under number 5,
Yep,
because I remember reading that,
Yeah.
10 square feet per chicken, 30 square feet per medium-sized horse, goat, sheep, or, I'm sorry, medium-sized goat or sheep, or .10 acre per large animal, 1 horse or 1 cow.
so I could have a sheep, if I have, oh, okay, let's do the.
Well, you could go on and say 2. Oh, no, how about 3? No, I mean, it's,
No,
Then you're looking at a Bible
for 10
here.
acres, then you could have-
I'm looking at a Bible, right?
For a quarter acre lot, you could have.
that's,
You don't wanna make it-
you could have
That's,
2
my
hens.
So
intention was
So
saying.
I'm going-
Can I finish, please?
No, go ahead.
My intention with saying livestock in excess of 12 hens under .25
It's a
acres
special
meant,
permit.
right, but it meant, livestock meant anything else besides 12 hens.
oh, really?
I should have maybe worded it livestock in,
So you're limiting
I
And
didn't think
hens?
of
Quarter acre
rabbits though,
to-
so,
12 hens.
correct.
Okay.
That was my thought. Of course, that can be amended or suggested. I didn't think of rabbits or other small animals,
Right.
but my intention was to prevent, you're not going to get 1 cow, maybe not even a goat, even though they're within I realize the conflict with what you're saying, or should we say
Yeah.
what is allowed, or should we say what isn't allowed? Like, how is it worded?
What, you gotta figure it out. So
Combination of both.
what I just did was
Yeah,
a fast little math equation. So if we go on your density, and I'm not picking on you, we gotta hash
No,
this out.
we
We gotta
should.
hash
Right,
this out so we
exactly.
can,
No, that's what
we
it's
can
here for.
understand what the implications are of what we're,
course.
whatever it is that we come up with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we go on the density, and you can have a sheep every 50 feet. right?
Yeah,
You can have 400 sheep on your 20,000 square feet lot. 20,000 square feet divided by 50 is 400.
That would be a lot.
That, and again, that's why we need to come up with some sort of formula for usable land, right? 50 square feet, and that might be a stall that they're talking about, if you look that up and you got that number.
Correct.
No,
Yeah,
you got
yeah.
that number from that, but that may be a stall area as to what you have to have a limited amount of space for this animal to be kept in, if you're keeping them in a stall, but out in the yard, you would definitely have to have more than 50 feet for the sheep, especially when they get fat like me, right, Linda?
No comment.
Yeah, I know. But that's a good example, right, is to, when we think through it, all right, what that really means. And that's a little excessive. If you had 400 sheep, I think we'd have a problem.
Right.
So,
You wouldn't have to mow your lawn, ever.
What lawn?
have a,
so, no, this is a good process, because this is what we need to do. We need to hash it out
Yeah,
and come up with things.
This was just meant to be a starting point where,
No, it's just-
to rip, to add, to
It's
amend,
the
to
starting point, but when you
discuss.
take it out, because what I'll end up doing with this, or we will end up doing with this, is when we come up with our draft, we give it to one of our friends or something. Tell me what you can have for animals. Let them read it.
Right.
Just somebody,
No, I
just
agree.
random.
That's a good
What
one.
can you have?
Southbridge
I don't know, I can have
program.
400 sheep, right? If they do math.
I
right?
did-
I just happen to be a math guy.
I did base this loosely on the one that had been provided, which I believe was almost a direct copy of Uxbridge, because I looked up Uxbridge's.
That bylaw?
Yes,
Yep.
the laws where it said
Yep.
it was
Yep.
8 hens,
Yep.
and that was the only thing they mentioned for restrictions. They didn't have land restrictions.
I'm still
for units
traumatized from the
or-
first time I read that bylaw, so I
There were
I am
certain parts
refusing
that
to-
were very
Uxbridge
restrictive.
has now taken control with that, and they want you to have a drawn print of your property, where
Right.
your manure is, where
Right,
the
there-
animal stays, where, they're out of control.
Right.
They did it wrong, and now it's,
Yep.
Theirs was
gone the
all
other
by
way.
permit.
And it's only a
All
couple years in
permitted.
existence, so
Right.
that's why.
right.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be in that situation.
I don't think we need to overregulate it, I just think
No.
No.
we need to come up with some guidelines as to what's reasonable, right?
Mike, I
And-
do love the category idea,
too.
but,
And I'm not married to it, it was just something that I stumbled
Right.
across. I'm like, aha, there's something that maybe makes sense,
Right.
right? And maybe it doesn't, so,
right, it would have to get specific too, because, I mean, the one you have, I know you just got it off the website, like it starts at 2 acres.
right.
but I think
Well, I
we
took
could-
that and I blacked it out, and I'm like, no, I don't, I'm just
Right.
gonna give it to you as it is, so then you can see
Right,
how they, because it was interesting how they took low density and then that reverted to A, right?
oh, yeah. Different
Because,
zone.
because of it's the size, right? If you're over 3 acres, then it went to B, right? So it was interesting how they did that. Whether it works for us or not, I have no idea,
Right.
but it's a little more specific, because then you could turn it, I didn't give you all the wording with it, because it was an actual survey that got sent out to people, and they filled it out, and that's how this thing came back, and they got this
Right.
information. Nobody was smart enough to figure it out on their own. They did it through a survey and got a consensus, right? Which is, yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So is there a number of units, like, per ABC?
Well, they might be in that survey, and I'm more than happy to, I'll print it out and bring it to the next
No, you
meeting.
know what I mean, like, just like a total number of, like, so say like in A, you're allowed to have 12 units.
Well, that
Right,
was
that's what-
that was the mindset that I
Yeah.
had, was that if we establish, and I'm gonna use Jessica's property, that, she's a village residential, she's got 20,000 square feet. How many units would be realistic there, right? Is it 12 units? So then, all right, what can she have in A, right? She'll be in A, she can have 12 units, right? So let's see, A is, all right, she can have rabbits, chickens, or turkeys. She can have 12 units, so she could have 12 of these.
Yeah.
She could have a dozen chickens,
Yeah.
right? And I don't think that would be unreasonable in a village residential, right? But if we said that, I gotta find my little buddy, the bison. 24 units, and we said that she could have 100 units in there, and she got 4 bison, that'd be a little ridiculous, right? Because that's not in that category. So, this was kind of like really basic for a resident to come in. I showed it to Kristen, she's like, this makes sense to me. Okay. I said, it was just something I stumbled across.
Right.
I like pictures. So
I like
look at
pictures,
it.
too.
All right,
I'm
so
a
then I
visual.
look at the picture and you can digest it quicker. My mind races too much, so when I start reading through the page, I'm already jumping words.
Yeah, same
And
here.
then I'm jumping pages, right? So I don't really absorb all of it because I'm thinking too quick. Right? So,
For this idea, could we further break it down, like under quarter of an acre, quarter
yeah,
to
we would have to.
half to one,
If
one
we,
to
if we
two?
used our own zoning and we had, village residential is 20,000 square feet, right? All the rest are 2-acre zoning, right? And you go from 20,000 to 90,000, right? But like Dallas's property, she's pre-existing non-conforming, that's a 2-acre zoning, but she's an acre and a half. That whole street is U Street. I think it was Rafferty that did that broke those up back in the day.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
This is what's developing around there.
Some sort of word game, and they got it through. But they're all 1.5 acres, so we could do that, right? So that would fall into this one, right? So if you had, even though it's RA, are you an RC or RA?
It's RC now.
Right, so she's an RC, right? So you have RC and you're under 2 acres, it may go to a different category if you're over 2 acres, right? And it depends on, we got to think about the density too, right? So you could have 20,000 square feet, but the houses are spread apart, or you could be down on Main Street and they're every 15 feet.
Right. Where are you going to put a chicken coop there?
Right, so
Yet
it's
they had horses there 100 years ago.
just a way to think through, well.
They didn't need a
Jenks still had
pasture.
horses, right?
They did hay.
Yeah, everybody. We had
They
hay
were.
fields everywhere.
Right? The horses were equipment back in the day. The internet goes down, I still got transportation the way I look at it. But that was just an idea, right? And maybe it's a marriage between this, and whatever else we come up with. This is really the first meeting that we're talking about it. The last meeting was just to kind of familiarize the process with everybody, so then people in the audience could understand that where our head was at, and I think we're going to get to a good spot. What do we want to do for the next meeting? Do we want to take this, mark it up?
I
try
have
to
some
marry-
here also to hand out.
You go.
I have one from Freetown, Mass.
Yep,
And I know you want to hear it, but it's exactly the same population as Douglas and 38 square miles, same as Douglas. And all they have is if your livestock gets away, there are fines. And they have so many different types of,
yep. Pass them around, hand them out.
okay.
to
And also,
everybody.
Town of Bellingham,
If you hand them out,
Would-
everybody can follow along with your narration.
I'm just going to hand them out,
Yeah.
you know, read it, and it gives you a lot of different areas. Like in Bellingham, no roosters are allowed in residentially zoned areas. A rooster on a farm must be
So-
kept 250 feet from an abutting residential property. That's pretty reasonable.
So a rooster can only be in industrial and commercial in Douglas,
Industrial.
Agriculture.
because
It depends on
residential
your,
and RC and RA are both residential agricultural, residential commercial. So you could only have them in commercial and actually industrial. I don't think we have any straight commercial.
in town now. We have a rooster. You can't have roosters in Douglas?
No, according to that, you said that.
Oh, no.
You're going to have it in any residential area.
She's just.
No, I didn't,
250 feet
abutting
away.
residential property,
250
Okay.
feet away.
yeah.
So if your chicken coop's 250 feet off your lot lines, you're fine.
Yeah, it doesn't mention
Right.
how big your lot is. You
Okay.
can have an acre, or that has 250 feet.
Can I have a copy of one of those?
You can have, everybody can have copies.
Good.
Pass
There are
them
lots of
around.
towns that restrict roosters.
That's mine.
Doesn't mean that we have to do, what the
So there are two
town
bylaws,
does.
regulations, sorry. Read them at your leisure.
She's up here.
Oh, yeah. But Bellingham was more restrictive.
That doesn't surprise me.
But it had a lot of, they've got 16,000 people there, but they also have 50 square miles, which is more than Douglas. So there's still a lot of open land. Oh, if I could. And another thing, too, one of the towns I looked at, they had something about grandfathering, whereas if, say, your horse passed away 10 years ago, and you've still got the barn, you've still got the stall, you've still got the cross ties, or, paste of hay and the shavings and everything, that's grandfathered. Or you buy a house that has a barn with a stall, and you want to get a horse, that's grandfathered.
That shouldn't be grandfathered,
It shouldn't be?
no.
Once
Why?
it changes hands,
Well, your neighbor Pete.
Well, one town
he's
had it,
gone.
that's all.
Now there's houses right next to him. You can't have the same animals you had then. The space isn't the same. Even though the barn's still there and everything.
Well, your neighbor has changed, that's all.
But you don't have the space anymore like you had because there's new houses in there.
No, I'm talking about, same house, you just buy a house in a residential area where the houses have been for 20 years, and somebody 10 years ago had a horse in the house you just bought, and the neighbors are all still there. I mean, the houses are still there, it's not new. I'm not saying you built a house. I'm saying you move into a place that has a barn and stall, and it's all set up. It's not that you contiguously have a horse in the same area,
Right.
just that you
So
bought a property.
whoever had that left,
Mm-hmm.
now new residents are around it.
No, no, the old
No?
residents are still there. I mean, who says they moved, right? New or old?
If you're there, like in your case,
Mm-hmm.
you should be able to get another horse in your same spot. I don't.
But I have
dispute
two
that at all.
I have two new residents. That shouldn't matter?
Yeah, but no, because you're the same resident in the same spot where you've had the whole time.
But if
You were there
she's-
first.
So it's somebody, if I'm moving into Douglas and I buy a place that used to be
If there's
used
new
for a
development
horse.
around it, yeah, I wouldn't think that would be grandfathered. Why would it be? I mean, if it was you having it because you already had it for all those years
Right.
before those
somebody
houses were
new,
there,
right.
sure. But when somebody new moves in, the situation is different than when you were there.
Yeah, it's just, that was the only town that had something about
Yeah.
grandfather.
Yeah.
Another example, and I'll pick on Jessica again, because she brought it up, that previous owners had boarded 3 horses on her property. So if that stall
Yep.
is still in place, she could have 3 horses on her property,
Yep.
on a third of an acre.
A third?
She's got .35 acres.
Oh, you mean back in the 1800s?
No, hey, the stall's still there. You said if the stall is still in place, right? So this is just
Yeah.
another example
True.
of,
Right.
we got to think through the whole
Okay.
thing, right? So, because I was listening, I'm reading this, but I was listening to what Buzz was saying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
that,
I started thinking
you're
about
right.
what Jessica had shared about her property. I'm like, all right, so It's just a thought, right? So,
Yeah.
and just to
And
make
that-
sure.
yeah.
Because if you go under, and I'm just going to mix building code in, and we're not going to go there, but I'm just going to use it for an example for the sake of conversation. After 2 years of non-use, you lose that use.
Oh,
No. I think it should be like,
I'm not saying,
I agree
I'm not
with
saying
you on
yes,
that
yes,
one.
yes.
Yeah.
But that's
I'm not
what the
saying
rule
yes,
is
yes,
now.
yes. I'm just explaining that,
for zoning, not for this regulation.
Well,
no, use, a
Yep.
use.
yeah, for.
This
use.
is under use.
oh,
A use.
In zoning, they have an animal use.
In building, we have
Use
use
is-
groups.
Oh, in building, yeah,
If-
but I'm
if
not
you
building
use it for a certain
anything.
group, well, that's how the grandfathering kind of works with that.
No,
with
The
building.
use of the property, right? So one would think that you could buy a residential lot and you could just build a garage on it.
which I did, and I turned it into a horse barn, 3-car garage.
On a separate lot, was it attached to your property?
No, oh, it's on my property, yeah.
Okay, so if somebody bought a residential lot, nothing's on it, it's not attached to nobody else's
Correct.
property, you bought this lot, could you build a garage on it?
I would hope that everyone would be able to build a
No,
garage on their
You
own.
can't, because it's the primary use and it's residential zone.
Oh, without a house.
Well, that's what I just
Just
said.
put a garage on it?
It's a land.
Oh, I don't
that
know.
You can't just build a garage, you
That's
can't.
the grandfather,
It-
where that use has changed.
Right,
So we can't do that.
so if you
From
did it,
harbor,
if you did it before.
housing a horse is a change of use?
Yes, it's
If you
the
don't
use
have
of the
one,
property.
And then all of a sudden you do, yes.
It becomes the use of the property.
Well, I could also park my car in there too, because it was a 3-car.
You
But
can.
Middle was cross ties, the other stall, and then my car was on the other side.
I know what you're trying to say, but as far as the building code goes, when you change
Wow.
the use of something, it
This is actually all healthy conversation.
I'll have to
It
look
makes
into
us all
that.
think about the
Yeah.
different things that there's other things that go along with it. It doesn't just stop with that thought.
Changing from a garage to a barn, or from a barn to a
because
garage.
that garage, these people are gonna be out there all night working on their race car. You want that at 1:30 in the morning?
I get that.
You should.
Just a comment on the Freetown one,
Yes.
no quantity. It doesn't
No,
say- it
it's
doesn't-
just about
I know. it
if they
doesn't-
leave your
Yep,
property
yep.
in any way, means, shape, or form. Yeah, or
No, but it
noise.
says you can have
Doesn't
them.
say
It
noise.
doesn't say, it says you can have them now. In here,
Yeah.
you can have whatever you want.
That's right. It was just, that's the very simplest one I could see.
And that's what brought us here.
Yeah. But that also
I think
had
Keith Menard
fines.
probably wrote this one for Bellingham.
Yeah.
I think Keith Menard wrote this one for Bellingham because
not a
there's no
fan.
roosters allowed anywhere. I know if you're listening, Keith, that was for you, but
Actually, Uxbridge is the same. They don't allow roosters.
Yeah.
Banned.
It's unfortunate, a lot of towns, some towns.
I don't know, you don't really need a rooster to,
I beg to differ.
Really?
I am a fan of roosters. I'm a big proponent
Okay.
of roosters. They are valuable for predator protection. They keep a
for
lookout.
free-range chickens, they were actually.
for free range, yeah,
Not even
but
free range,
if you,
Because we had a fox, just to use myself as an example, bust through our enclosure, killed several hens, and killed the rooster. I assume he died defending the hens. He probably would have killed the entire flock if it weren't for the rooster. They are very valuable.
and Bellingham says there shall be 3 square feet of floor space
Yeah, that's
for the
not-
poultry.
That's not very much.
No.
10 is what I read
Yeah.
recommended. It's good to look at other towns, though, to see if there's
Yeah.
anything we want to add, incorporate.
I mean, some, in fact, I think the town of
I try
Natick,
to play devil's advocate with this stuff and just think of
Where the problem's gonna lie.
if there's a possibility for a problem, right?
I do, yeah.
So,
And the town of Natick actually used units.
oh, did they?
Yes, I was,
Yeah.
I was like,
I'd be
wow.
curious.
But they are a huge town, you know. They probably don't have any buildable space left in Natick. I mean,
Yeah, there's some nice. still some-
yeah, but then they didn't refer to it in the rest of the bylaw, units.
Interesting.
Yeah, so maybe
I think if
But
we
it
can
just
come
went
up with
quick.
some sort of quantity of what could be used on spaces, that would be helpful for them.
And you gotta
But I
realize-
think they're looking for something like that.
Like a horse can be over 13 hands, then you're talking about Clydesdales. So if you say you can only have
Oh,
3,
my wife's a horse, a Clydesdale?
no, I'm saying there are people in
He's almost
Douglas
as
that
big as-
ride Clydesdales. And, there's a big difference. It's like
Very.
twice. It's like having 2 horses instead of 1. As far as manure pile and, everything is double.
Mike, a
So-
question on lot size. You said village residential is all 20,000?
No,
Is there a
that's what the
variation?
minimum lot size
Okay.
is.
so
Minimum
it-
lot
So it
size.
varies?
Yes, it varies, because you could be in, it was village business, but the Schuster Mansion that's up for sale right now is 30 acres, but it only requires to have 20,000 square feet.
In my
only
opinion.
30?
if we're-
30 acres, I believe.
There's like 2 lots there though, isn't there?
Didn't somebody else buy all the woods or something?
I'm pretty sure it's 30 acres.
Well, the same guy owns them both.
Oh, okay.
They're both for sale now, the land
Oh.
and the mansion.
Again?
Yeah, he's got 2 different signs up. He's got the mansion over here and he's got land over here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's 4 million for everything, 3 million for
Wow.
the house. The house is 9,475 square feet.
I've been in it.
4 million for
Nice.
everything?
Wow.
Huh?
Yeah.
4.2 for just the mansion?
No,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the land
the land and the
separate
mansion,
things.
yeah. Yeah, the mansion is 3 something, 3.4 or something.
I'd put cows up there.
You know, I mean, chicken.
How many cows can we get? How many cows on 30 acres? That's
Right.
a lot.
I wouldn't have more than 10.
But I like some of the wording in these here, all, the 3 different documents. I
Yeah.
think we can sort of
I looked up a
melt
town,
them together.
a town in Connecticut, and they did the units, but they did it by weight of the animal, which was interesting.
That's what I mean, like Clydesdale versus a small
Right.
horse.
Like a horse would be anything that exceeds 500 pounds, sheep. It was interesting, it's an interesting way to do it.
Do you recall which town it was?
This is Weathersfield.
Weathersfield.
Weather.
I'd like to do more research.
Well, that's what I was doing.
Yeah, yeah, right. Just to
Because I
gather
like the idea of the units.
information.
I mean, this is nice. Would it confuse people? I don't know.
Big time, in my mind. I was like,
Oh, see, now I didn't find it confusing. I don't-
yeah.
There's so many,
Well, because you
breed
don't
of animal
know,
has
we
meanings
haven't
also.
established the value
So
of
you
unit.
have to figure that
Mini
in
horse.
with too.
Right,
Mini
so
horse is not a pony.
Once you know
Yep.
that.
Right, well,
You
that's
could
what,
have
I
many
thought
horses
that
and
was,
ponies.
this was
Right.
neat.
That's right, they're not
Be
the same
like,
as
all right,
ponies.
cool, I can have 12 units, and what am I? I'm in C, right? So I use mine, and so I would most likely be in the, probably the C category, because I have, well, Buzz would be in the C category,
Yeah.
right? So if we say that 5 acres a lot, what would it be, from 2 to 5 acres, you could have X amount of unit values on
Right.
that. If you exceed 5 to 10 acres, you could have this many, and over 10, you would have a different number, just to give them some sort of
Right.
idea.
Right.
We really don't have a problem with stuff like that. It's more, you've seen the complaint, so you already have an idea, right? It's more prone to the congested area where people are close. There's nobody close to Buzz's house, so the lady next door is not going to complain.
There were still complaints in
Hope
the
not.
2-acre zones for both
started.
smell and noise,
Right.
and the
Right.
2-acre or half-acre, so,
But that all has to do with cleanliness,
right.
and
Has to do with
composting.
cleanliness mostly.
If you
I
don't
think
pick
so.
up ever after any livestock, it
Always.
piles up.
Yep.
So I like the idea of, like, if we were to do the units instead of just saying by zone, like, since you're saying
Yeah.
that the lot size does vary, to be a little more specific, especially where they're small, like, say what's allowed in under 2.5, what's allowed in 2.5 to 0.5, what's allowed in 0.5 to 1,
Define
and
the
so
units,
forth.
define-
This is like a quick
Right.
cheat sheet for people that come in. We still need some sort of document that.
But you also need
that spells it out.
usable land. Like, for instance, I was on the planning board.
Yeah,
This is just up the street from me. These are all 2-acre lots, and the only buildable area, because of the huge wetland, to get the frontage and the 2-acre lots, they had to, I call them a dog leg. That's 1 acre, but that'd be allowed. And they're right next door to their neighbor who has another 1 acre that they can't use the rest of the property at all, because this is 20 feet wide, and there's no way to build anything back there. And this is actually less than half an acre. But if you go by the 2-acre, they're allowed to have what they want on a half an acre, and then there's other people that live on the other side, so you're even closer now.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, and that's what we were talking about at the first meeting, of usable space. Right?
Correct. So that's got to be in there.
And it's not up to us to determine what's usable on your property, right? But we determined that on usable space, you could have X amount of animals, right? And you decide to exceed that, just like I said about his 150 cows, or 100 until they calved, that if there's no issues, he doesn't have a problem. If there becomes an issue and they come down and say, you've exceeded it, then he has to modify it, right? The same thing with the usable space, right? On this chart, maybe you fall under what you could use.
Well, no, because I'm not, I'm an acre.
If you're
That's
on, I know that, but let's assume you're on a 2-acre spot, but you only have 3/4 of an acre of usable space, right? And you fall under 3/4 of an acre, you fall in category A, which is the chicken, the rabbit,
Yep.
and the turkey. But you got 2 acres, and you're far enough away from your neighbors, there's no reason why you couldn't have a goat there or whatever, if you had enough usable space to do it. That's your own discretion what you would use.
Okay.
Right? You shouldn't be penalized, they only have a chicken,
Or a goat.
turkey, and a rabbit.
Say I wanted a horse, though. That's
If you
another
wanted a horse
category.
and you're able to house it in that area, is like, we've had this discussion. You could have 100 acres if you don't know how to take care of your animals, or if you're lazy, doesn't matter how much land you got, right? But you could have a 1/4 acre, and if you're very diligent about taking care of that animal, then it's fine, right? So that comes up to yourself. If a neighbor complains, Jessica complains about me having my horse on my acre of land, right? But in the chart says I could have it because it's 2 acres, but usable land, I have to use common sense, right? If I'm taking care of it, you just don't like a brown horse.
The complaint has to be viable, too. It can't just be
Yeah.
somebody says, oh,
Yep.
I hate the horses. I just hate them. I'm afraid of them. And she keeps complaining. You know, that has to be something that's in here. It has to be a viable complaint.
That's,
Right.
You know.
That's why guidelines are useful, so then when someone complains and says, well, there's a horse on, 1 acre, and the guidelines, it says, well, they can have a horse on an acre, then whoever is answering the phone can say, or the
Right.
animal inspector can go look, and he says, well, nope, they're within their rights, and then however the process of complaints is handled, which I guess will
Yeah.
be determined by the.
If the manure isn't cleaned up, or, yes, I mean, I've seen some really bad fly problems at one stable one time. Horses were covered. And I'm like, wow, how could it get this bad? But the manure pile was right outside the barn. Hello. So, there's ways to get around, even the fly issue without using chemicals and,
Right.
yeah.
The process of complaints is definitely part of it. It's not part of what we're doing, but it is part of it. So one would hope the animal inspector would follow back up
Yes.
with the complainant and say, well, we checked it out, and,
Yep.
they're within their rights, and, maybe you can do a little neighborly chat about whatever your concern is, or.
And the Board of Health is looking for our input, so if we have suggestions or comments on, even manure, right? As manure management, I guess is the best way to
I love that
describe
idea
it, right?
that you had.
And then we make the suggestion, and it's up to them. At least we brought it to their attention. oh, I didn't think about it. Like, I'll go back to the 400 sheep, right? All right, I didn't think about the repercussion. All right, so it's just something to jog their thoughts and help them get to a conclusion. So,
Or good composting.
right, yeah.
Some people have real nice compost areas, dated different
Yeah.
areas for each one. And that works beautifully, but most people don't have that kind of room.
Yeah.
If
Or room or
especially you
equipment.
have it-
I go out there and I'll take a
Right.
backhoe and I'll make, push the
Yeah.
pile up, but I'm also, there's nobody near me. So,
Right. Well, it's way more congested than it was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That used to be great down there.
right,
It was, but it's not like that. And that's where, like, grandfathering, if more people moved in around him, he wouldn't have the same situation.
right.
That used to be all beautiful.
I remember when it was a dirt road,
Yep. Oh, yeah.
George Washington Spring and all that. I remember when those houses went up.
You remember George, what?
No. I remember the spring he drank out of on the way to Connecticut.
I know where that is.
I couldn't resist,
The house
Linda. You know I was
across the
going to ask you that.
That's the hardest thing for a lot of people is being able to get rid of it, get rid of their manure.
Right.
I mean, not everybody has a dump truck or a dump trailer or the buckets to do it. When you see these horse people with their little muck bucket, they're doing all they can, drag it out to the pile.
Right.
It's not easy, but
I just made a note, the section of the draft that I had done about resources on the town website to add info about composting. That could be very helpful for folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, because right now I think they have some sort of agreement with Uxbridge that you could go down there. I don't know where it
I
is.
think that's just for leaves, though.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they'd have heart failure if we all showed up with.
I know.
There you go, guys. You want to compost?
Right.
there used to be landscape companies would take it. Compost.
Wow.
But that's a hard process too. You still have to trailer it there. You gotta get it there no matter what. If you had one local,
Yeah, if you have the space, then you let it break down. It's like I have a pile that's the whole thing's like coffee grounds. It's huge.
yep.
Well, we could convince the town to buy the 30-acre Schuster Mansion parcel and turn it into a giant manure processing plant.
Good luck with it.
They'd love that on Main Street.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think it's a great idea.
Schuster might come back and do something.
Schuster'd be rolling over in his grave.
Yeah. So this is all good information. I think what we should do is, if anybody wants to poke around and look for the next meeting, kind of go through this a little bit, maybe highlight the sections that you think are useful out of each one of them, and then we can kind of compare notes the next time, and maybe we can start working on some sort of draft.
A combination of,
Of a little bit.
Yeah.
a little of all of this, I think
I
is
think
pretty good.
important, it has to be some kind of fine for them to, Board of Health, to Kristen to work with.
No, I get that. Yeah, that's what we talked about. I had suggested last time, maybe as simple as a $5 fine, right?
Yeah.
$5 per day or something like that. But
That's true, each offense. Yeah.
Not on the
Starting at
first offense, but.
Second.
The fact that people coming in.
That's like a last resort because you don't want to do anything, right? But we should come up with something for density on how many animals that
Yeah.
is reasonable and logical to have on a piece of property. It's hard to do it by square footage as the math problem that I shared.
Right.
Right. I don't know if we, how we go about it.
I would like to research, I wrote down Natick and Weathersfield, whose regulations
Yeah.
use units. I'd like to
Yeah.
reference theirs and
Yeah.
and what you provided,
Yeah.
and just try to
Yeah,
maybe
how I
come up with.
found that was I put in farm animal bylaws, regulations, but you gotta put farm animals, you don't put farm animals, you're gonna get all dog bites.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. in the first
Yeah, I
couple days, I
noticed
was
that.
like,
I did that too,
Animal
and I was like,
control.
oh,
it's gotta be more than dogs.
Why don't
in
they
here.
just call it dog night?
yeah.
It's all animal
It was
Once I
hard.
put farm animals in front, I'm like, there it is.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so, it was helpful, so. And some of them are in foreign countries, but even there's little things that
Pull.
you can pull out of it. So all I did was that snippet thing on your computer, and I just put a rectangle around each one, and the section that I wanted, and pull it out, because there was a lot of stuff. And it was a survey, so it wouldn't have been too relevant for us to look at, because questions more than answers that we're looking for. But I like what they started with.
Yeah.
It gave us a and again, this is just one section that I'm thinking, not the whole thing, but a cheat sheet that Christian could hand out. Here you go, this is real simple.
Right.
Right.
Or you
So-
can.
So then
post
they
it on
would
the
know it.
town.
So then you refine it a little bit more. All right, so I'm on A Street, and that ironically, it's a category A, so that's all I can have in there. So what is it that you have? Well, I actually have an acre and a half, even though I'm in village residential. Well, okay, so then you could look at something different. And it's a good little guideline, just to start with. It'll give Kristen something that she could email over to her. So you just look at this thing, you have questions, and it's a starting point, right? And then we have, obviously, there'll be some sort of bylaw that's made up, so they can read into it. It addresses animals getting out. Some of this, even both of these, the Bellingham and the Freetown, it's almost like it was made 100 years ago, the way some of the wording is. It's like, I don't know, the last time I ever heard of anybody raising fox, skunks, minks, or raccoons for commercial purposes. Right, so, no, I know, but it's in there. There's
Yeah,
the
but
reason why
they're not
somebody was doing it,
exotic.
that's why it's here.
I think they're just being all-inclusive.
There used to be mink farms around.
I know a kid who had a skunk.
Yeah.
Was it in, I think it was in here.
We have
I
problems.
know a horse that had a
in my area
skunk, one of
with
mine,
mink.
about 2 weeks ago.
You had a mink in your,
No, I had a skunk.
I did as well.
The horse was out rubbing his face
Yep.
on the back of the other one, and Cheryl was like, what the hell's that horse doing? Goes, "Oh, now I know what you were doing.
I got a little dog that thinks he can beat the skunks. He's nailed every time.
Tomato juice.
Oh, boy. I'd like to make some, I made notes on the
Yeah.
draft that I had come up with, so
Yeah.
make some changes and adjustments and do the research on the other towns that use units
Yeah.
and kind of try to maybe come up with the units based on lot size recommendations.
I like the idea of the census, where you know,
Right, that
have
was,
to, like they have dogs, I think. They don't have cats on the census,
right.
but you could add something like that. Of course, somebody new moving into town, they don't get the census but once a year, so they've already got all their livestock, and
Right,
they don't know about the
Yeah.
census. Of course, it's they're bad.
right. You just have to
They
hope
have
they
to
would
know.
call and ask, how many am I allowed to have? And then we'll
Yeah.
have this to give them.
So, my thought on it, not to be negative about it, but I wouldn't be into the census because,
No?
it opens up the opportunity for more taxation.
No.
Yeah, also, it's like-
You're creating,
Why? Why would you say
just like
that?
the thing you said before, though.
okay, so,
violation.
let's see, Chris has got a pretty big operation going over there.
He's got
Maybe he
2
should-
horses, let's
maybe
tax
he-
him?
No, but
Oh.
maybe he's got 50 head of cattle, right? So, and
Well,
he's got
that's
it on the
a lot.
census. Well, no, but it's on the census, right?
So-
I don't put my dog on the census now, I don't think,
Well, that's lying.
or the cat. I don't know.
Yeah, but why? Why
I
do
don't
we have
fill
to
it out
put
because I'm
any
not
animals on
I know,
census? I
but
think-
it's a way for them to know
think
what
this
you have.
oversteps
The
the
animal
boundaries.
inspector.
They don't need to know what I have.
I don't know what's on there.
We could,
I
You said
agree.
This is an
Yeah.
issue that doesn't need to, like, then
I
you're
don't-
putting yourself out there, like,
Right.
hey, I'm in violation.
Right, no reason to put
Like, I don't think there
census.
should be a
we
census.
could skip the census part. I had just
Okay.
kept that in from the previous draft, that was when they were talking about permits and having a count.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
But I used to be
I'll strike
charged
that.
tax on my horse.
See, that's
Yeah,
what
well,
I'm
that's
saying. I don't
Personal
want this
property.
really?
Yes.
Oh, some towns do that.
Personal property.
Wow.
And then,
Animals, yes.
about 10 years later,
Wow.
I didn't get my bill, so I went down to town hall. How come you didn't charge me my $6 a year on my horse for personal property?
you
She goes,
drink a lot?
oh, we should have never done that. And I said, well, can I get a rebate? Oh, too late.
Oh, my,
I'm like, it was like against the law, a horse is not personal property.
Yeah.
wow.
Get taxed for our saws,
For
Real-
what?
They
Well,
tax-
that's,
carpentry equipment.
yes, yes, that's part of your business.
Wow.
It's equipment.
We buy it once, we pay taxes on it. Why should we pay taxes all the time on
Exactly. I
it?
Oh,
agree.
you do?
That's,
Wow.
that's
Yeah.
overreach.
That's the beauty of Massachusetts. We pay for the privilege to be in business.
It's like being taxed for your
It's crazy.
dog, right?
You shouldn't pay taxes on your dog either.
No.
Yeah.
I know, we'll just put taxes on the height of your manure pile, and that'll keep them
Nope.
really small.
Yeah, but if you
Then you'll
spread
get
it out
rid
and
of
only
it.
keep it 6 inches deep, it won't
Spread it out more.
That's true.
be a problem. Your land just gets higher.
Right.
But I think we did pretty good. We had a pretty good conversation, a good starting point. How about next Thursday?
The first,
Not this coming Thursday, not the 1st, the 8th.
the 8th.
Yeah.
I can't make it. Garden club.
Well, Monday is town meeting,
You need
the
to,
5th. Tuesday is the selectmen's
That's what I used it
meeting.
for.
Wednesday is the zoning meeting.
I can't.
So Wednesdays are out all the time for you?
2 more weeks.
Mondays are out. I can't do Mondays.
You can't do this Monday anyway, it's town meeting coming up.
How about the 6th?
Can't do Mondays.
Tuesday, the 6th?
No, I have a selectmen's meeting.
Selectmen.
I thought you were meeting before the town meeting,
Yeah, we are,
the 5th.
we are.
How about the 6th? You meeting then too?
At 7 PM is our
Oh.
regular meeting,
Gee, it's not on the calendar. Huh,
because it hasn't been posted yet.
Oh.
Posted
okay.
Thursday or Friday of the week. Because it's always in flux. Changes constantly.
Friday?
Friday the 9th?
Closed.
Well, some boards meet.
We can get in because I.
I think open space meets, right? Open
Oh,
space.
Friday, I can't, Friday,
Friday the 9th?
oh, the 9th? Yeah, I can-
Never mind Friday then.
yeah,
We'll
good.
just, let's see. Every other day is out, so, I mean, we need to have a quorum. The week of the 12th? I think we got a good start. We've got
We got a good
something to
start.
look at.
It might not necessarily be a bad idea to take like a 2-week break, so.
Sure.
We can just look through this stuff.
Collect more stuff.
Yeah.
You get your thoughts together and maybe, did you have this thing electronically? Oh, we don't.
No, no. In fact, I couldn't even print it. I had to copy it and then paste it on Word.
Yeah. That's
Some
what I-
towns are
That's what I do in
tough.
Feed all the time.
Yeah.
Right click it.
I have the wife do it.
All right, so.
2 weeks, Thursday, is that what we're talking?
12,
we could do
13?
Not the 12th, that's a Monday, he
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
do Mondays.
You can
The 13th, 14th,
I could do the 13th.
Planning Board is here on the 14th.
13th, Tuesday.
Tuesday the 13th? Is any, are-
I can't, we went to the PTO meeting.
15th, Thursday?
Thursday again? Thursday's good.
Thursday the
I'm good
15th.
with Thursdays.
I could do
Only
that.
Monday.
Thursday, what'd you say?
The 15th?
15th.
7 PM.
Thursday the 15th?
Yes.
Would anyone like me to share the draft electronically? Would that be helpful?
Well,
Or just-
you have it all printed out now, right?
Yeah.
We all have a copy of it.
Right.
Yep.
So no need then? Okay.
Yeah, what I'm cautious about is open meeting violation. One person asks a question in the group, now you're
Right.
deliberating, and then we just violated all the
Right.
rules.
Okay. So I'll make amendments to it anyways, and we'll regroup.
Yeah,
So for those units, if you're talking like a small parcel,
yeah.
what do you allot for a unit?
That's the question.
You know, that's,
Right, so that's
you gotta
what you gotta think about, right? So.
Now, she has 12 chickens already.
Hers for an example, right?
Right.
So if you're in village residential, do you allot up to 20,000 square feet, right? So you're not gonna use village residential, you're gonna be like 20,000 square foot, or a half acre or less.
Right.
You could have 12 units, for argument's sake, right? And that would be a category A.
right.
Right? From a half acre to an acre, right? It might still be category A, but you might have 15 units,
Right.
right? That's something to think about. So,
So we're going to break it down per acreage or half acre.
yeah,
Well,
just
what's
to
gonna be
start
allowed.
with, just to get some ideas, right?
I think that would be reasonable.
Usable acre
Usable.
or half acre.
Yeah, usable land, right?
Ex-
We can put
Would that
down,
be
and that's
including
how-
the house? I mean, it'd have to have a house on it.
Yeah, that's the other thing, you have to
Well,
subtract the,
if the house is on it, unless the chickens are in the house, it's not usable space of the
That's
land,
correct.
right? So
Yeah.
that would be up to the discretion of the property owner, and it doesn't become a problem until there's a complaint. That's what my thought process is on it.
Because some of these,
That's the thing, it's really not a problem unless it's a complaint.
Right, so if you say a half acre usable land, right? I don't even think we need to get into that. I think if we say a half acre of land, right, you can have that, and we're going to assume there's going to be a house on there, and it's not going to encompass the entire half acre, right? A half acre of land, but then you go there and you find out that
it's in a swamp.
their house is 30 feet from the street. I know the perfect example, West Street. Have anybody been up West Street recently? You know that house that I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Concom.
Yeah.
It's all over that.
So there's a house on West Street, across from, there's a little red farm on the right-hand side. I actually bought a Morgan horse from the guy back in '94 or something, that lived to be 36. Morgan the Morgan, name was Morgan. Right across the street, this guy built this little tiny house, and he's probably, what, 25, 30 feet from the street?
Yeah.
Pretty close.
The house is there, and right in the back is wetlands, like, I mean, 5 feet off the back.
I
of the
think
house.
DEP
It's ridiculous.
superseded that and let him do it.
I don't know how that
Yeah.
happened, but now, whatever he's got for land area, right? If somebody, and say he had an acre, I don't know what he's got, but say he had an acre, and we said, yeah, you could have, you're in B, so you could have any one of these animals on your acre of land, and you could have 20 units, for argument's sake, right? Well, animal inspector goes up and say, yeah, that's what the chart says, but you don't have an acre of usable space. You only have about 50 feet.
That's
Right.
right.
So clearly,
Yeah.
he couldn't have an animal there, right? And maybe we put usable, and then maybe that, because me being argumentative, I would say, it doesn't say that, it says an
Right.
acre, right?
Right.
So maybe we do put the usable space.
Oh, they would argue it, believe me.
Right,
Oh,
no, I would argue it.
Yeah.
If I found a
Yes.
loophole, I would argue it.
Yeah.
So maybe we do put usable space in there, right? Just to help the enforcement part of it when there becomes a
Correct.
complaint,
Yeah.
right? So maybe usable makes sense.
right? When, I don't know if we're all feeling tired, if we want to wrap up or address this now. I'm just wondering when defining units, like one unit is a chicken, one unit's a rabbit, if we're talking about limiting the number for overcrowding and, not being too close to the neighbors versus the animal's health and welfare, like, should we make a distinction between units representing an animal that grazes or an animal that eats grain? Like, should that be
I think
different?
all animals.
I would use something like this
Yeah.
where it had, like this one here, C encompasses all the animals, right? So
Right.
now you have an actual value to it. as to what the chicken is versus a guinea. A guinea hen is 2 units, and a
Oh.
chicken is 1, and they're the same size animal. But
No, a Rhode Island bred is a big chicken
Much larger.
compared to the little,
Fowl.
guinea
Guinea hens
hens,
are loud.
They're just loud.
Loud.
but
Right.
they're roughly the same size.
Yeah, they
They're not Foghorn Leghorn from the cartoons, right? But they're roughly the same size. But anyway, we have a value that's been established which may make it easier, right? We just look at that and see if it makes sense, right? Just a thought. If we try to come up with our own units, it's going to get really confusing. Because we're going to do what we just did. I said, chicken's the same size. Oh, Rhode Island Red's a lot bigger. Okay, depends if he came from southern Rhode Island or northern Rhode Island, right?
I think the info out there does vary a little, like we said, based on like the size of the horse by pound, some of them
Right.
by pounds.
They do it
so
by
it
weight,
does
yeah.
vary, it's not a
All this,
standard.
for the last 38 years or whatever that I've had horses, anything over 14 hands, it becomes a horse. If it's under 14 hands, it's a pony.
Oh, I'm just talking about the units.
There's
like-
lots of people in the audience, what do you guys think?
Versus weight versus.
No, a horse is determined by, not by weight, by
By
how
hands.
tall it is,
anything under 14 is a pony?
Not a mini, just a pony.
a pony.
Well, then you got to have minis
A
in there.
mini's a different breed, right?
They're like a dog.
Mini's
Right.
a whole different.
Yeah, but if you look at different
Well-
breeds of sheep and goats, they vary in size too.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
The weight, I thought the weight one was kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
weight.
Going by the weight of the
Yeah.
animal was kind of an interesting.
And my horse would have been considered a draft. I mean,
Yeah.
he was too fat.
Well, anyways, I think we're off to a good start. I think that we'll keep plugging along, we'll come up with something.
So if we always try to come up with like some type of value per like amount of land, like of units, like maybe break
Yeah,
it up.
well, just look at this a little bit and try to get it into your head, and then,
Say
and
next
before
6
you even
years,
do it,
4 acres or
you,
something, like-
what size land do you have?
I have like 5 1/4.
Okay, so you got 5 1/4 acres, right? So stop and think about your own land and say, realistically,
Yeah.
what should somebody have on this piece of property, right? And then you could look at it and say, okay, I can have 6 horses for argument's sake. Okay, so then I could have 72 units
Okay.
on the 5 acres. And that might be the easiest way to start, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a starting point, right, to establish some values. I know I'll ask, I'll let you, do we want to let Dallas entertain one question for us?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah,
Thank you. Inevitably, people who have lived here a long time who do have animals who breed, like, there are people here who breed goats or chickens or horses or what have you. There are people who board horses. Would grandfathering be something you guys would discuss to protect people from neighbors who just want to complain about something? Because if the animals are well cared for, if they've been there for years, I understand people moving into town, like bringing 100 things, I get that. But if you've been here, your animal's well cared for, everything's good to go, would they be protected and just say, okay, don't get any more, and like ideally, as your animals pass, like this is where we want you to be? Or are they gonna be in trouble as well, especially the boarding facilities, because that's a whole different ballgame.
That's a stable, you mean, boarding, they do it for
Well,
business.
There's businesses and there's backyard boarding too, there's 2 different sides of
Right,
it.
some people, right.
So you're talking about people's income in some ways too. That's just another thing to think about, is grandfathering going to be part of what you look at doing?
I think if you're doing it reasonably, like, then it should be, we should just make that the rule then, right?
I think that the Board of Health is going to consider that for, I'm assuming, because I haven't had zero conversation, only what everybody else has been involved in, because I don't go down there and talk to the Board of Health, other than Kristen, whether I'm going through this stuff, but I have no interaction with Corey or Bob or anybody else that's on there. I would assume that they would consider that, but getting to your breeding portion of it, it's like having a litter of puppies, right? You can't have a dozen dogs on your property, but if you have a litter of 8 puppies, that doesn't make you in violation, because the puppies, until they become 6 months old, are still puppies.
Yeah,
right?
so
And
whether-
you don't even have to register them until they're 6 months old. Right?
So the town of
Which I waited a
Weathers-
year, I was in violation because I didn't want to give my dog a rabies shot until he was a year old.
Right.
That was just my own choice. I think it's healthier for the animal, but that's me.
This statement, I liked it. They did this in one town. Livestock offspring shall not apply to the calculation of livestock units until after weaning. So meaning,
Yep.
I liked that statement.
I like that one, yeah.
I like that statement, we
Yeah.
should incorporate, because
Right.
that's,
Right.
that
It-
That's
covers
like with the pigs.
breeding. Right,
4 pigs.
right, and then they have
More than that in
babies.
every litter.
Right,
In my draft, under the density limits, 5B, the last point, I did put newborn animals not
Yeah.
intended to remain on premises into adulthood.
Right.
So
Yeah,
those are
same-
Yeah, that's what I thought,
excluded
yeah.
from
that's,
density
yeah,
limits.
same thing, I like that.
Right.
But I do like the grandfathering, it has to be something.
Yes, I'm in favor of grandfathering, and I had put that in my
Yeah.
my draft point.
Yeah, at the end.
Section 10, grandfathering for the life of the animal.
It
Wendy,
should be for the life of the owner.
Yes, I was
How
going,
long
I was
you
going
live
to
there.
say, when I was doing research of other
Yeah.
towns, I did see that some did say for the life of the owner of the
Right.
property. So if they have always had
I like-
horses, they can
right.
continue to always have horses, so I can add that in there.
I like that too, yeah.
But like instead of the grandfathering, if it's like acceptable for that, like why can't someone new, like why can't we just make the new rules like meet that criteria?
What do you mean by
Like-
that?
For new people coming in.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
if why can't we just make the rules like work for that? Like instead of having to worry about grandfathering people in, like if someone's making it work now when like their animals are taken care of and everything,
Right.
like why can't we just make our rules like work around that? Like not like work around that, but like work within that, like within reason. You know what I mean?
Well, we're trying
Yes.
to also base it on
Yeah.
lot size.
Yeah. but-
Which throws
but you
people-
end
a lot
up
of
with
people
lot
out.
size that's smaller than something that's.
Right, the
that
need
we
for
designate.
grandfathering only comes in once we start to restrict by units and lot size, so that folks who, like, say we're just kind of, picking a recommended number, say 10 units per half acre, and then, folks already have, oh, I've already got 12 units, what do I do? We don't want to make them get rid of their animals, so that's why grandfathering would come in, and it would, the wording I had chose was, animal owners will not be required to alter the number of existing animals they currently have on their property for the life of said animals, except where deemed a health risk to animals or the environment, such as density limits well in excess of guidelines, proximity to wetlands, or other health concerns as determined by animal inspector and board of health. I'm not even sure that part's
That's going to be a hard one to
necessary.
figure out because
Right.
almost every horse is brown. And then you could take one person's horse, bring it to another person's horse, and you couldn't tell me if that was the one that was there yesterday.
You would just have to go on
Right.
good faith that people aren't going to say like, oh, that's the same horse, he's been here for 50 years, like that.
So that's why it shouldn't be based on the animal's life.
It should be on the owner's life?
Yes, on the residents.
Owning that.
So how would you word it that you can have the same number of animals? So if
In the
you-
same ownership.
So if you've always had 2 horses? you
No,
can
I haven't,
always-
my horse passed away in 2011, but I've still got all the same setup. Maybe I'll win the lottery someday and I can afford to
Right.
get another horse.
So how would that be
It-
worded?
The property is still in my name, and I've lived there since
Right.
1978.
Yeah, but I don't think anything preventing you, even with the proposed bylaw, you're
Well, if you're limiting
Property.
it to acres,
So I'm saying, it's like,
That's
why not
what-
like limit it so you could have a horse like anyways? Like why not?
on any
like-
size.
Well, then not on, maybe not on any size, but like.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, well, I'm saying like you're worried about your 1 acre lot having a horse, right? Like, and you're saying like, can I be grandfathered in? Like, why don't we say like, yeah, you can have a horse, you don't have to be grandfathered in, you can just have a horse and like make our line there, like,
1 acre.
or like maybe not, like, I don't know.
Well, that's
Right, we could.
basically,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, instead of like worrying about grandfather, maybe to a point, but like within
because some
reason, like-
people have
But you could, on an acre of land, and I'm just sitting here doing the math in my head, if you had 100 by 100 paddock, because a lot of people that are in the horses can relate to it that way versus square
Yeah.
footage, that's 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
That's a quarter acre,
Yeah.
right? So you could realistically have your barn, 100 by 100 paddock, and with 2 horses in it, without problem. There wouldn't be a blade of grass anywhere.
And not guaranteed if you have 5 acres and you have 3 horses and you just let them completely eat it down, and they will. 12 months out of the
They pull it
year.
out by the roots.
Absolutely.
Cows
So
nibble
by
it
your
off.
math, right, like we could, like, then like a half acre, you could have a horse then, right? Like, that's what I'm saying, it's like,
Potentially, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah, but this is what we gotta come
Yeah,
up
that's
with,
what I'm-
right? So
that's
this
right.
is what we
That's what
gotta
I'm
come
saying.
up with. But when you think about that, so you have to just have considerations.
Yeah, no, I
Right.
understand.
Correct.
Um,
You got to keep it
because-
clean.
Because
Yeah.
a half acre could be in village residential, and if it's clustered housing,
Yeah.
right? You may not have, even the area says a half an acre, you might not
Well, that's the
have
usable land
usable
player.
space. Yep, yep.
Because that's pretty much all I had for my horse. I mean, I've got my house,
Right.
and then, 50-foot setback from the front. And then I used to try to limit at least a third of the acreage, so he could have some green, I'd hot wire it off. And once a week, I'd let him go in there for 2 hours, max, that was it. And the rest of the time, he just stayed in the barn. Yeah. Neighbor said at 5 o'clock, the horse would come out of his barn and wait for me to come home from work. He knew exactly when I got home.
Crazy
5 past 5. Yep. And,
And stare at the house, that's what I was.
no,
That's what mine does.
When you
Stand
coming
there.
out?
yeah.
Hey, it's time.
So he didn't need all that, even that quarter of an acre that he had to use. So, anyway,
You have to have a lot of areas to be able to rotate your pastures so that they don't eat everything down. It's not, I mean, you can reseed it, they're gonna do the same thing.
that's right. That's why I buy hay.
It's
It's actually
You gotta have the
probably
hay
more
anyway.
nutritional.
usually,
You don't get to keep
Yeah.
a folder.
Yeah, we live in
I
Massachusetts.
don't?
No, because you'll have to make a new one every single.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You take the
Good
folder
try.
home,
Good
only the
try.
papers.
You thought you were special, you were good.
One of our secretaries should get so mad. She goes, I'm gonna make up another folder. What'd you do with it?
Yours was on top, so she put the sticky note on yours. All right, does anybody else have anything else they want to add before we adjourn for the evening? I'm going to put this in here so then she can give that to Elizabeth.
careful of the tractors on the road this summer.
What's that?
Careful for the tractors on the road this summer.
What tractors?
This guy, when I'm trying to get down to 16, I got a Dodge's tractor.
Oh,
All right, if we don't have anything else, our next meeting is going to be on
I wrote it down.
15th at 7 PM. I put a note in the folder for
Kristen.
Kristen so she can post that, and she'll try to remember to send us the agenda, but it's basically the same agenda, just the
Right.
date's going to change on it. In the event that it gets skipped, unless you get notified, the meeting's happening. Other than that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Motion made and seconded. Huh?
In favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, everybody.